the next point was the expansion of supersonic jets, and I think this was obvious to a lot of people at the time. The reason for this being obvious is because the update 1.85, being called supersonic to the dismay of many Italian players, it was added two supersonic vehicles. This was the first foray of Gaijin into supersonic. You had the F-100D, and then you also had the MiG-19 PT. Now that should show you how far we've come in just a year when it comes to supersonic vehicles. The other stuff I also talk about for the points of the expansion of supersonic jets. So we have new mechanics, will be tested live for about 3 months at the least. So this was of course the F-100 and the MiG-19. Testing out air-to-air missiles, testing out the general playstyle, and also testing out the Mach 1 capabilities of them to see how well, the supersonic actually works in the game. Whether there's problems server-side, whether there's problems code-wise, they could be fixed before they added way more vehicles. Other nations will get at least one supersonic fighter. Now, unfortunately, this isn't the case yet. We're pretty close, we're pretty close. If we have a look at it. Remember, in update 1.87, the T2 was added. So yeah, that shows you how much we've had. The British still haven't got a... Well, no, sorry, they do have a supersonic vehicle. What am I talking about? They have the Phantom. So the British now have the Phantom. The Germans also have the MiG-21. They also have a MiG-19. The Soviets have MiG-19s, MiG-21s. Then also, the Japanese with the T2. The only nation which is really missing out right now is France. And even with the French, I'm not sure if the Étendard is actually Mach 1 capable. I don't think it is. I don't think it's a supersonic vehicle. And also, I suppose the Italians are kind of struggling for one too. So you have the majority of nations have supersonic vehicles, but not all of them. And it seems like the Étendard isn't a supersonic vehicle. It's very close, but not fully. So therefore, other nations will get at least one supersonic fighter. This is technically true, but it's kind of a cop-out. I should have said all nations, because that's what I thought at the time. I thought all nations will get at least one supersonic fighter. At least now, at the start of 2020, the majority of nations have supersonic fighters, just not all of them. And I'm sure that will change, going forward, especially as we go into this new era of Phantoms and MiG-21s and whatever the hell may happen this year, especially with the Japanese F4EJ Kai being talked about, which is just bonkers to me. Then the next prediction was one bomber will be added, maybe a Vulcan, community would pan it, expansion will be pushed for each nation, my guess next year 2020. So the idea of this was that you would have a supersonic bomber, just to test out how it would work at top tiers, kind of like in the same vein of stuff like the Canberras, which were added, and people would not enjoy it because the game is not really designed for these supersonic bombers, especially stuff like the Vulcan. It's very much a high-altitude machine, which is designed to get to where it's supposed to get really quickly, and then get the hell out of there very quickly. It would be incredibly hard to hit it by the time it's already hit your bases or already hit your airfield. And there are plenty of examples that different nations could get. The French could get something similar, the Soviets and the Americans, but the problem with these style of bombers is that you could only give them to specific nations. Other ones just never built any, or they preferred multi-role machines. So that's why I think it would have got panned if it was ever added. And I also think why we haven't seen one this year, because there isn't really a way to balance these machines yet, which would be good. You already know, or if you're new, you should know that when it comes to the B-29 and the TU-4, I personally don't think they should have been added. I think that they are generally detrimental to the game in the long run, and I think we're seeing that now when it comes to, how high the repair costs got before the bomber change, and also just the general playstyle is not fun to really play and not really fun to play against. The supersonic bombers would have been an expansion of this, and since we didn't get any this year, I think Gaijin have realized that is something that needs to really be refined before we move on. The next point was the refinement of air-to-air missiles to make them better, and in brackets I put better, not realistic, and this was basically a shout out to their usefulness in the game. When the AIM-9Bs were added on stuff like the F-100D at the end of 2018, the maximum overload was 6 Gs, now it's up to 10 Gs, and also their general movement also is different compared to before. Then we had the introduction of stuff like SRAMs, R60s came in updates 1.95, but even before then we've had a big expansion of Sidewinders. AIM-9Es are now in the game, AIM-9Ds are also in the game, Stingers are in the game in the form of helicopters, and then of course you have Mistrals on stuff like the Saddam 25. That's also not including all of the stuff such as the PL2 missiles, which it seems like a lot of the missiles are being given very similar properties to each other to try and make them more balanced instead of realistic. We're also entering a point of history where these missiles, along with the vehicles that they were used on, are becoming classified. And I suppose you could say there has been a refinement of air-to-air missiles to make them better this year, but I would still say that we're still on the realistic side of things, even though it isn't as realistic as I would like it to personally be. I still think that right now we are, it's more realistic than it could be. Compared to what could happen, but I think this year in 2020 is when we see them go ballistic. We already have SRAMs, which are incredibly powerful in the general use of things, and I suppose also as well we've had our first beam riding missiles for the British, the Fire Lashes on the Swift that everybody forgets about. So there you go. There is, I suppose, a refinement of them. Just remember, at the start of the year, we just had AIM-9Bs. That was it. We didn't have any SAMs. We didn't have any, big refinement of helicopter air-to-air missiles. We didn't have Iglas. They were in the files but never used. And then, of course, we had stuff such as AIM-9Es, AIM-9Ds, and all that stuff added as well. So I would say there has been a big expansion of it. The next point was more rank 5 and 6 premiums. This was to accommodate for each nation getting a supersonic jet. A 9.0 premium will be added. There were three nations at the time which did not have beyond 9.0 ground premiums. They will come with expansion of their rank 6, a useful Japanese rank 5 premium, and also will be useless until BR range is stretched. Then they will be meta, e.g. Leopard T55AM today. So out of the 4 predictions made there, 3 of them are true and 1 of them isn't. The first one, to accommodate for each nation getting a supersonic jet, a 9.0 premium will be added. That's a half-truth. Pretty much every nation got a high-tier premium this year. If we have a look back, you have the F-40 Japanese Sabre, you have the Seahawk Mark 100, the G91R4 for the Italians. Then, in 1.89, you have the addition, I suppose, of the A2D, but that's not really, a high-tier premium, but at that point, the Americans already had the Sabre. Then, for the Soviets, you had the MiG-17AS added. The Americans had the F-89B and F-89D. Then on top of this, in update 1.93, you had stuff added such as the J-8A for the Swedish, which is that little biplane, but mainly you had the Hunter FGA-9, which was put into the game because the Reaper was just terrible compared to its compatriots. The other machines that were added were mainly Tech Tree vehicles, but you can see a lot of nations, once they got their supersonic machines, also gained their, their decent rank 5/6 premiums, and when rank 6 came out, when rank 7 came out and rank 6 came out earlier in the year, these premiums got bumped up to the higher ranks, so therefore they would stay, research effective. The Vautour 2A was also added, the Israeli Vautour for the French, when the Super Mystère was added back in update 1.87. So overall, that is true, but not because each nation got a supersonic jet, because some of those nations still don't have one, such as France. The free nations that don't have 9.0 ground premiums, they will come with the expansion of Rank 6. This is true. We had the Type 74 GK added. Then, of course, the OF40 MTCA and the AMX30 Super, which have all, been added to the game. Then, the next one, as we talked about, being a useful Japanese Rank 5 premium, I would definitely say the Type 74 GK is a good premium. It overall is really nice, and it also meant that the Type 74 in the tree, plus its premium version, got itself an APF SDS round. So, yeah, it seems to work pretty great. The last one, though, is a little bit of a dodgy one. So will be useless until BR range is stretched, then it will be meta, e.g. Leopard T55AM today. So the fact is, I was basing this on the fact that a lot of these premiums would come in and be a same or similar BR as the XM1. By this point, the XM1 was realized to be a very good vehicle. It was bumped up to, or it came in, or it was bumped up to 9.0. This meant that, and remember, this was before quantitative matchmaking was added back in. Quantitative matchmaking is the ability, and I think it's one of the best things that War Thunder has ever done for matchmaking, and it never gets any credit. It means that if you have a full BR 1.0 range in your game, the top tier vehicles, or the top BR vehicles in that game, there's only going to be a maximum of 4 of them. So this means that you can't have a full team of 10-0s versus a full team of 9-0s. Instead, you're probably going to get 4 team members in 10-0s versus 4 team members of 10-0s, and everybody else is in 9-0s to 9-7s. And that is a huge thing which revolutionized matchmaking in itself. And it kind of disappeared for a while, but then it was reintroduced this year, which I was very happy to see. But with the XM1 coming in, I thought what would happen was other nations would get stuff similar to the XM1, some crazy prototypes. But instead, they just created the 87BR around stuff like the A1A1L44 and the T55AM. And because they came into the game, or at least the T55 is, on the dev server, they were 9.0, so they were going to be the same BR as the XM1, and then they dropped them to 8.7, probably seeing, what was happening to the XM1, and probably seeing, what was going on with it. What they decided to do was to put a lot of these in at 8.7. The AMX30 Super, the Type 74 GK, and also the OF40 all came into the game at 8.7. Now the MTCA, which was a just straight better vehicle than its counterpart, it was just better in every way than the OF40, OF40 Mark IIA, the only difference being obviously the engine power, so it was either better or it was just the same as it, and therefore it was just better in every way. It was literally paying for power. That finally went up in BR. So that went up, which was nice. The AMX30 is still sat at 8.7. I personally think it should go up. And also, you have the Type 74, which I think is okay at 8.7. But because we've had the addition of 10.3 to the game as well, when it comes to BR range, the BR range was stretched. But because it was stretched, 9.0 became meta. So the 8.7 vehicles aren't as powerful as they used to be, when 10.0 used to be the highest BR, because they were at the top of what was the... They were the top of what was secondary to the top BR bracket. So you had 9.0 to 10.0, then you had 7.7 to 8.7. These were the two kind of meta brackets, and since a lot of the premiums were sat at 8.7 in those brackets, they did incredibly well. But now with the expansion of the BR stuff, a lot more of them get up to 9.0 in to stuff like the XM803, the MBT70, and the KPZ. So they have lost a little bit of their power, so they're still meta, and they're still used a lot. They're just not as good as what the T55AM and the A1A1L44 were back in the day. There has also been a lot of additions to them, such as some of them getting thermals, which have greatly improved their use, but yes, it is, something that they're still very good. I just wouldn't class them as a fully the meta set of vehicles now. The next point is a sad one, and I would say hasn't really come true, just because we did have a look into it, but it wasn't what I would class as a full success. The expansion of World War Mode. So we knew it was coming in 2019. We knew it had been planned. We knew it was being tested. And these were the points that I had on it. So emphasis on cooperative, more PvE than PvP. People will talk about how they love it, then hardly play it, like RBEC. Good stuff. We'll try and incorporate all players of vehicle in War Thunder. Will be fun, but never utilized effectively. And so obviously that bit is an opinion at the end, as I've noted. But I would definitely say there was emphasis on the cooperative, so more than PvE than PvP. A lot of the battles were automated when it came to the general map, and also if you didn't have a full squad, you could run three battles at once with 60 people in tow. So if you didn't have that, and you only had, let's say, 20 or 10 people, a lot of the interactions would have been PvE on those battle modes. They also tried to fix that by adding in randoms to these areas, which came with their whole source of own problems. I actually made a video back in the day going through my critique of World War Mode and what needs to be improved for the next time. Even though I really enjoyed the first season, I do think there was inherent issues when it came to the general matchmaking of it, which if you wanted to be a competitive, or not even a competitive game mode, if you wanted it to have integrity, you would have to fix these issues going forward, especially if you give such high quality prizes like they did. Then there was the people will talk about how they love it and hardly play it. This was hard to tell if this was true or not, because of the fact that there was only one season, and the season didn't last too long. It lasted about a month, so we'll have to see if that's true going into the next season of World War Mode, which I'm sure will come in 2020. And if that is the case, and if that is something that we have to look at, then therefore it is unfortunate, very much similar to RBEC in the form of aviation. We'll try to incorporate all types of vehicles in War Thunder. That wasn't technically true because there was no naval element, and there was also no helicopter element. So yeah, they incorporated a lot of World War II vehicles, which was great, but it didn't incorporate, it probably incorporated less than 50% of the vehicles in the game. So yeah, that is something that definitely was untrue, and then it would be fun but never utilized effectively. For me personally, right now, if I have a look at it, that is still my feelings on it, and hopefully that changes with the coming year. It was actually really fun to play as a squad, playing with techies and going through it. Now we have pretty much 3 squadrons that are all ready to go and play World War Mode and have fun in it in their own independent ways, but the problem is, we haven't seen a return of it. Hopefully in the new year we hear about it. Then I had some predictions about maps, so more modern tank maps, more deserts, and more what-if maps. And, well, I mean, we didn't actually get a ton of maps this year. I also said, just for some examples, inner Stalingrad, I wish that was the case, Western Europe, and also Scandinavia would have been an interesting place to have a look at. So more deserts and more what-ifs, because obviously a lot of the conflicts in the last 40 years have been on deserts, or have been in areas of desert. I should have made predictions. Well, I suppose I did. I made predictions earlier about naval maps, and what that did was, I suppose those were true, but these ones I don't think are true when it comes to predictions. So, more desert maps, that isn't really what we've seen. So, we saw a new location in update 1.87, which was Alaska. And when the Imperial Navy was added, the Smolensk was added, which of course is a map which is very much designed around air, so therefore it isn't part of this idea, but I thought it could eventually be turned into a ground map if you look to the center of it or on the rail yard and all of that wonderful stuff. Then in update 1.91, we had cargo ports, which was added for ground battles. This was definitely a what-if scenario, because the fact was, when you have a look at the map, what you find from it is just a harbour, and there is no way you would generally fight around this if you were in ground vehicles, so that does hold true to the what-if idea. Then, in Update 1.93, no maps were added, and then in Update 1.95, only naval maps were added. Over this last year, we've only had 2 ground maps, and only technically 1 air map, if you want to disregard the EC game mode maps, which I suppose, it may not be best to do because they are quite integral to the game, and there's a lot of work that does go into them, but overall, in this year, there was just 2 maps for ground. You had Alaska, and then you had, obviously, cargo ports, and that was it. Now, that isn't to say that the map function of the game was not completely revolutionized in one of the updates, which was, of course, update 1.91, Night Vision, because what happened in that update was the map rotation filter was added, and that has also been recently changed to add not just a dislike function, but a like function as well. So you can ban a map, you can dislike maps, and you can like maps. You can pretty much, play what you want to play, or at least give you a better chance of playing what you want to play. And that has definitely revolutionized the amount of maps that I've seen, and also some of the maps have been taken out of the game because of it. Volokholamsk has just gone. It doesn't exist anymore, at least in the current map rotation filter. And a lot of other maps have also, kind of disappeared. So looking at the 3 ideas of Inner Stalingrad, Western Europe, and Scandinavia, I suppose Scandinavia hasn't really been shown in ground forces. I thought it would be cool to see, but unfortunately it's only really been shown in naval, with the addition of Coral Islands and also the Palau Islands. I suppose that isn't really Scandinavia, so yeah, it's the predictions for the ground maps were just wrong. They just there was no desert maps, though I suppose there was one what if in the form of cargo ports, but overall the predictions were just bad. Then new nations. So this was kind of a shot in the dark, because I didn't think all of these nations would be added in the next year, apart from a few which I had heard murmurings of. And the new nations, so I talked about same model as unlocking helicopters used to unlock minor nation trees. So this would be Romania, Hungary, Finland, and Ukraine. Now, for me, I still believe in these ideas. I do think that if we want to incorporate minor nations into the game, and I know people aren't going to like the fact that they're called minor nations, but they are minor nations when it comes to vehicle production, and what you would have to do is you would have to branch them off the main tech tree and make it so if you want to, let's say, access the Romanian tech tree, you would have to, let's say, unlock rank 3 in the German tech tree, or if you wanted to access an Israeli tech tree, you would have to unlock rank 4 of the American or rank 4 of the French tech tree, or something similar to that. And just like the helicopter mechanic that we have, if you get a certain rank of vehicle in a certain nation, you unlock their helicopter tree. But that hasn't come to the game yet, and I don't even know if it's going to come to the game yet. It would be nice to see, but unfortunately we have no information if it will or not. All we have information-wise is that we know what ground tree is coming to the game when it comes to new vehicles or new nations, and also pre-existing nations. We know a few helicopter trees that are coming. The Italian naval stuff is also coming. And also, Swedish ground is coming in the new year after aviation has been added. Now, this is the bit that I got right, that I'm happy about. So, instead of just doing the same model as unlocking helicopters, I also said full nations would be added. And these full nations were Sweden and China. This year, we saw the Chinese ground tech tree, the Chinese aviation tech tree, and we also saw the Swedish aviation tech tree. So I made the prediction at the start of the year that we were going to get these 2 nations, and both of those nations turned up. and I'm happy about that. And it was nice. Well, it was actually kind of annoying at the time when I, talked about the Swedish coming at the end of the year, and a lot of people, I got a lot of very aggressive and angry messages at the time saying, why would I make stuff up? Why would I why would I basically, why would I lie to people? And I just kept telling people it's not a lie. I have this information. We've gone through some of it, not all of it. Just wait like a week. And after about a week of abuse from people, whether it was fellow content creators, whether it was from people of the community, whether it was from subscribers, the Swedish aviation tree was announced. And everything went silent. There was no people talking about it. It was as if it never happened. But I still remember that week, and I still remember those people, and I don't think I will forget. So it definitely will, it definitely will broaden how I interact with certain individuals in the future. But the main thing is, both of those came to the game. And we also know, Swedish ground is going to come next year. That isn't really a prediction, as it's been announced. And yeah, so that was all of the predictions. I'd say over 50% came true. Probably a lot more than 50%. And the problem with doing predictions for 2020 is Guardian has actually been really good at giving us information going forward. As I've said, we already know Swedish ground is coming. We know a few helicopter trees that are coming. We know their general plans going into the next year, and also stuff such as the Italian naval stuff. The one thing that we're really missing, though, which is pretty much tied into everything, which we've seen a massive increase in this year, is mechanics. Mechanics haven't really been talked about that much, and that for me is where I'm going to fit a lot of my predictions. Anyway, it's been really nice having a look back at the predictions for 2019. I'll probably make this thing a yearly thing, and also I will say, when it came to a lot of these predictions, none of them were really based on prior knowledge. None of them were based on information that I had prior. There was nothing really here, unless it was public information. What I'm talking about is private information here. So yeah, hopefully this year we'll have something similar, and I'll try and abstain from the stuff that I generally know about after talking to different people. So anyway, thank you for watching this long video. I hope you have enjoyed it, and well, have a lovely day. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyins Terry, Elove Goat, and Seductive Trash Can for supporting the channel.